Good afternoon, everyone. It is today's topic, and I'm Chu Chapman. It is today's agenda. Let's start with the importance of the South China Sea. It is two factors. The first one is the natural resources, and other one is the geopolitics angle. From the geopolitical angle, geographically, it is about 850 miles from the east to the west, and about 1,500 miles from the north to the south. The South China Sea is connected to the Pacific Oceans in the east and Indian Ocean in the south through the Strait of the Malacca and the Sunda Strait, becoming a transportation link between the two oceans and possessing important military and commercial value. Another reason is the natural resources, which is so rich in the fishery resources and large amount of the oil and the natural gas. And then let's see the China changing stance on the South China Sea dispute. During the Cold War, the China fights with the Vietnam over the sovereignties. In the late Cold War period, Deng Xiaoping to running a high our capabilities and shaping the sovereignty and seeking joint development as a basic diplomatic policy in 1984, like 韬光养晦不强出头和各自争议，共同开发。After the Cold War, the China is running a good neighborly policy to normalize the relationship with the neighboring countries, participations in the international organization like the ASEAN, and the South China Sea sovereignty dispute was gradually shelved with the diplomacy as a main method to handling the issue of the South China Sea. The promise is to maintain the national sovereignty and security of China. In 2010, China disputes with the Vietnam and the Philippines and USA becoming more and more frequent and serious. After the Cold War, the China would like to pretend nicely and actively to build up the international relationship in the multilateral collaboration mechanism. Let's put the realism in the South China Sea issue. The South China Sea disputes reflect the realism of the military security, since the South China Sea is a state of the anarchy. If a state attempts to change the anarchy through the national influence or military force, other countries will cooperate to confront for their own security and survival, which may even lead to military conflict. However, there are no any military conflict or war is happened in the 2010s. So we can saw that it is not fully realism in the South China Sea issue. Let's see the liberalism. The country collaborates to resolve the issue for the common interest. They believe that the cooperation in the international mechanism is more beneficial than the confrontations. For example, the diplomatic policy of the China, which called 共同开发各自争议, is a good example to prove the liberalism is some in the South China Sea issue, but it is not totally peace. So we cannot 100% to say that it is the South China Sea issue is all about the liberalism. Okay, and then I would like to say that the South China Sea issue is about the military safe realism, which is combined the liberalism and realism. It can be seen that the South China Sea disputes reflect the military safe realism because it enforced the economic liberalism and the competitions between the great power and the corporations in the multilateral mechanism. In terms of the sovereignty dispute in the South China Sea, states still focus on their interests of their own countries. For example, China believes that many disputes are influenced of the China's sovereignty by Vietnam and the Philippines, and such as the Hainan Islands incident. Secondly, the China found that the U.S. tried to make a consultation with the China in the South China Sea issue in 2012, which is a demanding actions to cheat the core national interests of the China.
Move to China energy background in 2010 and 2020 as the energy demands of China is the fastest growing country in the world, especially the oil and natural gas. And in 2010, China became the world's largest oil importer until 2020, which showed that the energy demand is keep increasing. So next part, move to China resources in the South China Sea in 2010 and 2020. China conducts 4 large-scale, include the period 2012 to 2016, and I have showed one example on this PowerPoint. In 2012, China began exploring for oil and gas in the South China Sea because of the push overland. And I have three more examples. In 2013, there were more tensions with Vietnam. China used a joint platform called Ocean Oil 981, which upsets Vietnam. And in 2015, China did more exploitation and built artificial islands, showing that the area has many resources. And the last one is in 2016, even after challenge from the Philippines, China kept exploring and finds important resources. So from the period 2012 to 2016, China focused on exploring oil and gas, which can create more tension in the regions. And this must have shown China's energy diplomacy strategy in South China, in the South China Sea. Okay, so first, diplomacy strategy. China bilateral cooperation with other countries like China and Southeast Asian countries sign a number of energy cooperation agreements, and there are 3 examples: Vietnam, Thailand, and Malaysia. And there are more examples. So first one is China working together on renewable energy with countries in Southeast Asia, such as working on solar and wind energy. And the second is China and Indonesia Natural Gas Corporation. They signed a natural gas cooperation agreement in 2016, and Chinese companies participate in the development and transportation of the natural gas in Indonesia. And the third one, I have showed that is China and Vietnam signed a framework agreement on energy conservation in 2018, which can jointly develop the oil and gas resources and in the south and which is in the South China Sea, and it may increase the resources obtained. So the benefits of this is it may help both sides work better together in energy. So this part is about the infra conversation. As the democracy strategy, China proposed the Belt and Road infrastructure in 2013, which can improve the infrastructure construction in South Asian countries. And for one example, transport and communication infrastructure, and the construction of energy, transport, and distribution network is about China provides to the South Asian country, and therefore China provide some help to South Asian country like funding and technical support. And one of the example is Malaysia Asian Coast Railway and Infrastructure Project in Philippines. As the result, which can promote region energy circularization.
Okay, and then we will take the Scarborough incident in 2012 as a case study to analyze the China and the Philippines international relationship. The Scarborough Shoal, also called it is Huanyan Island. The whole story is about on the April a patrol aircraft of the Philippines Navy discovered 12 Chinese fishing boats near the Huanyan Island. The Philippines Navy then brought the Chinese fishing boats in the Scarborough Shoal and attempts to arrest the Chinese fishermen operating near the Huanyan Island. The Philippine Navy brought the Chinese fishing boat for inspections and claimed to have seized illegally. In the response to Philippines, China state dispatched the 海舰75 and 海舰84, which are carrying out regular rights to provide the protections patrols in the South China Sea to the water of the Huanyan Islands on April to provide the protections for the Chinese fishing boats and fishermen. The incident reflects the China diplomacy to the Philippines. It states that Huanyan Island is China's sovereign, should not have any dispute over the sovereignty of the Huanyan Island and urged the Philippines government not to make any noise about the sovereignties of the Huanyan Islands and the South China Sea. The Chinese ambassadors in the Philippines issued a statement demanding that the Philippines immediately stop its illegal actions and leave the area of the South China Sea. The next day, the Chinese request the Philippines ships to immediately withdraw from the South China Sea. In the incident, we can saw a strong diplomatic stance of China, although the diplomatic department has repeatedly stated willingness to resolve the dispute peacefully. It also emphasized that it is fully prepared and urged to urged the Philippines not to misjudge the situation of the Hainan Islands. These comments suggest that China may considering to using the military means to resolve the issue. As China modernized the military, the policy has shifted from the 韬光养晦 to the 有所作为 a more proactive behavior. Yeah. At the start of the incident, the China went to the fishery in administrations and marine ships to ensure the safety of the fishing boats, leading a standoff with the Philippine ships. We then issued a strong diplomatic statement and media comments about the using force and the continue to apply economic sanctions, ultimately focusing on forcing the Philippines to withdraw first. The Philippines, using the hygiene as the main diplomatic policy, which is not to give up the Hainan Islands, not to resort to violence, and not to seeking help from the USA, and to use the diplomatic and non-military policy to hope that to have an international court of justice to clarify the sovereignties of the South China Sea. On the other hand, although the Philippines plans to cooperate with the USA military, it emphasized that it will not get close to the United States in the stance of the South China Sea issue. The Philippines has launched a joint military operations with the United States and point out that China is a huge threat to many countries, calling on other countries to express their stance on China's actions on the South China Sea issue. To summarize the Hainan Islands incident, these two countries, including the China and the Philippines, have adopted a peaceful approach to the South China Sea issue, with the attitude that sometimes is friendly and sometimes is tough. One of the reasons is that China do not want to give the United States any opportunities to intervene the South China Sea, and China and Philippines also want to balance the forces from many countries to avoiding the war or military conflicts to the South China Sea dispute.
Move to the last part, a result of the 2016 South China Sea. So, and now I will sum up some important points of the South China Sea arbitration, and there are 7 points. So the first one is China wants energy security, and the second is China pay attention to the oil and gas resources in the South China Sea, and the third one is the political tensions in the South China Sea means China needs to find a balance between exploitation power and facing challenge. And the next one is China used energy investments to increase its economic influence in Southeast Asian and security resources development. And the next one is the Belt and Road Initiative promotes building infrastructure and strengthens connection with South Asian countries. And the next one is China and press enforce unity to improve its international position and influence. And the last one is China is increasing its mandatory to protect its energy increase in the South China Sea. So this 7 point is the most important point of the 2016 South China Sea arbitration. And here is our reference list. Thank you.